The patriarchy would not exist if it wasn't for women. And with that logic, Gilead, which we know is it's a mix of patriarchy, fascism, and religion, would not exist if it wasn't for characters such as Serena, Aunt Lydia, and even June. Let's break this down. We already know that these characters get flashbacks in the show. We get to see how these characters were living in the US, which in the show is now known as Gilead, and I think this wasn't a coincidence. I think the writers wanted us to see how things developed and basically learn how or why the characters turned out the way they did. The first character that we're going to talk about is June. We know that June was an editor. She was raised by this woman named Holly, who is kind of an activist. She has a lot of opinions, and she always encouraged June to fight back. June, however, she didn't want any of this. The June that we see now is the face of the revolution. But back then, she wanted to get married, she wanted to have kids, and just live a regular life. So, why do I think that June contributed to the creation of Gilead? Here's why. People like this are the reason why fascism, patriarchy, even religiously motivated violence goes unchecked. You've got passive people that are witnessing something wrong, but they choose not to engage because they want a peaceful life for themselves. There's the saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. And if you don't speak up against extremism when you have the chance to, you're going to end up in situations where you no longer have the ability to. And we actually see this in the show. June recalls how it all started and how she didn't wake up back then. And it's something she deeply regrets. It's also the reason why she probably feels responsible for what's happening around her. People like June are all around us. They are women who wear pants, they own property, they have bank accounts, and yet they say things like, oh, I'm not a feminist. Well, you would not have access to any of these things if it wasn't for feminism. Feminism is the reason why you're allowed to express your opinions or form them in the first place. People who say stuff like this are truly the worst kinds of people because the men that they are trying to appease would not think twice before taking their rights from them. The next character that we're going to talk about is Aunt Lydia. So we know that Lydia was unmarried and childless. She worked with kids and she had this special bond with this kid named Ryan and his mom, Noelle. So she thinks that Noelle is an incompetent parent. Why? Because she picks him up late from school, she's not feeding him properly, and she is dating questionable men. So, did she call CPS right away? No. Lydia ends up becoming friends with Noelle, and Noelle encourages her to go on more dates, which she does. But then this one date ends up badly, and Lydia isn't happy. She lashes out by calling CPS. She could have separated the kid from his mother before if she cared about the kid's safety, but she didn't. I think on some level, Lydia has decided that women don't deserve their kids. They also don't deserve the right or the freedom to not have kids. Lydia does this a lot. She uses religion and tradition as the shield to do terrible things. She thinks motherhood or children are some kind of gift from God, which, by the way, religious extremists do this all the time. In her head, she did everything right, and yet she ended up alone and childless in her old age. So now she takes it out on these young women who can still have children even though there's this whole fertility crisis. Lydia ends up in charge of the handmaids. This is the perfect role or the perfect opportunity for her to take all her frustrations out. She manages to not see herself as evil because there's all this religious crap that favors her. So I think, if anything, Lydia is a cautionary tale, because if there weren't so many angry, bitter, jealous women that were ready to turn on the fundamental rights of all women just because, just to make themselves feel better, there would be no Gilead. In Gilead, the aunts are not employees. This is a whole institution, which means that Gilead targeted women like Lydia and recruited them to exert control over child free women and their bodies. Gilead relies on this narrative that women were selfish, they were irresponsible, they were having kids out of wedlock, or they were not having kids at all. Lydia turning against her friend just because she was having a bad day, separating a single mother from her child, is exactly the kind of support that Gilead needed in its initial stage. So, what's the takeaway here? Patriarchy cannot exist if women as a whole would just get their morals in check. If it takes just one bad day for you to turn on the rights of all women, you have a problem. Lydia finally breaks in season 6 and somehow becomes a part of the revolution. I have mixed feelings about this. Do I think that it's possible for someone like Lydia to side with women? Maybe. I don't think Lydia was a psychopath. I think she just has a lot of issues. She couldn't have kids, so she separated parents from their kids. She ended up alone and childless, not by choice, so she resents other women for having a choice. There's nothing special about Lydia's brand of evil. You think that it takes great evil to create something like Gilead, but actually, it just takes a few projecting, emotionally unintelligent individuals and dressing them up in religious propaganda. That's all it takes, honestly. A bunch of women turning on other women. I left Serena for the very end because, unlike Lydia, she was a special kind of evil. We often see Serena as the direct opposition to June. She's not afraid to break the rules, but she's not rebellious the way June is. She doesn't think the rules are unfair, but the rules are there for a reason, and she is not the reason. Serena thinks that the rules are for other women, lesser women. Serena is very smart, she's very manipulative. She knows that she's always going to come up on top no matter what situation she's in. The show is written in a way that you never forget that she's only playing nice. In her own words, never mistake a woman's meekness for weakness. And Serena is never the weak one. We see this time and time again. She has this ability to get people to do what she wants by making it seem like it's the right thing to do. But at the same time, she's a hypocrite. The right thing to do is always somebody else's job. It's not her job. She knows that Gilead is going to take her rights from her, but she's allowing it. Why? Because she's going to get a baby out of it. She doesn't think that she has to obey her husband. And she knows that Fred is just a figurehead. But she's fine with that because she gets to lead. She knows that she deserves to read, and she is not letting any religious propaganda get in the way of that. But it's okay if the rest of the women never work again. That is the kind of person she is, and I have trouble feeling any sympathy for her. Now, Serena has her insecurities. She sees herself as incomplete without a child, even when she has accomplished so much in her life. In case of both Serena and Lydia, this extreme reaction to not having kids shows that this is not about kids at all. The problem with Serena and even Lydia is that they think kids are accessories. They are accomplishments or tokens of how important you are. Their problem isn't that they were deprived of motherhood, it's that people who are less deserving were blessed with kids. Serena in the show she represents women who think that if they align with men, they will somehow be treated better. But by supporting the patriarchy, she would distinguish herself from other women. Serena's girl boss arc is its proof that she wants a successful career and freedom of speech, but she wants other women to stay at home and focus on motherhood. She thinks she can have both, but that does not apply to other women. Serena is like a pick me, but on steroids. And I want you to know that you don't need pick me's on steroids to create something like Gilead. You just need a whole lot of them. Serena's first contribution to Gilead is a political one. She's the mind behind domestic feminism. Before there was Gilead, before Gilead was a nation, it was just a bunch of people with extremist views, and Serena was a writer, she was a speaker, and she was well known for this book called A Woman's Place. And this book is all about finding a solution for the fertility crisis. She encouraged women to focus on their biological destinies. And this was huge for Gilead because she was able to get the support of the masses, especially women, during the initial stages. I think that Serena's narcissism is what it took for the sons of Jacob to successfully overthrow the US. Even though they don't acknowledge her contributions don't go unnoticed. In the last two seasons, she's acting as an ambassador of Gilead. Why do you think that is? They were hoping she would have the same effect on the people in Canada as she once did in the US. But why was Serena's ideology so effective in the first place? For one, she's a gifted writer, she's a charismatic speaker, but that's not enough. She was leading a movement that sets women back by 500 years. And yet, she got a lot of support from women. Why? Because she packaged it as domestic feminism. This way, she would be able to fight any criticism that she would get from the feminists. And she came up with this in the middle of a fertility crisis when people were desperate for kids. Men in Gilead couldn't have successfully exploited so many women if it wasn't for their wives playing along. And the commanders, they called it. They knew that women wouldn't allow their husbands to sleep with other women without damaging this perfect family unit. The only way they would allow this to happen is if they would get something in return, and that is children. Gilead targeted barren women like Serena smack in the middle of a fertility crisis, sold them this future where they would have perfect families, and all they had to do was support the state in trapping hundreds of fertile women and forcefully breeding them. Serena was a special case, yes, but she was a wife in Gilead. And there were a lot of wives. All these women were complicit. The reason why Gilead was so successful is because they were using the insecurity, jealousy, and narcissism of other women at every stage to create institutions. And those institutions are what make Gilead so powerful.